From the campus of Winston-Salem State University, welcome to WSSU Future Focus. Everything Winston-Salem State University. And now your host, WSSU Chancellor, Elwood Robinson.
Jan Turner Houston became a U.S. diplomat in 2006. In this capacity, she has advanced U.S. foreign policy abroad for over 8 years, serving in U.S. missions in South Africa, Philippines, Cameroon, and Mexico. She also served 4 years in Washington, D.C. as a press officer and speechwriter for the Special Envoy for Sudan and South Sudan as the Western Hemisphere's public diplomacy officer covering 21 Caribbean countries. She received her undergraduate degree from Winston-Salem State University in 2004 as a double major in Spanish and mass communications, and her master's degree from the University of Delaware in urban affairs and public policy in 2006. She grew up in Burlington, North Carolina, and is married to Dr. John Allen Houston. They're expecting a son in June. During her tenure at WSSU, Mian was a Chancellor Scholar, a member of many campus organizations, including Cheer Phi Cheerleading Squad, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Student Government Association, and was elected Miss WSSU 2004, Miss CIAA 2004. Candace Helton is an experienced communication strategist and public servant working in the federal government and voluntarily with nonprofit organizations. By day, Candace served the public affairs specialist at the U.S. Department of State in the Bureau of Global Public Affairs. In that capacity, Candace fosters relationship with the American people and department officials to gain a deeper understanding of U.S. foreign policy. She excels in this field by leveraging her interpersonal skills with academic, think tanks, NGOs through a wide variety of programming at the Department of State. She enjoys coordinating speaking engagements, interviews with the press, and developing strategic communication plans. In the past 5 years, she successfully organized and spearheaded dozens of speaking engagement with universities and think tanks in Washington, D.C., Denver, Phoenix, and Chicago. Her mantra is, "Let's strategically connect people to policy." She leads the efforts for the department's annual Historically Black College and Universities Foreign Policy Conference. As a product of an HBCU herself, this has been the pinnacle of her career at the Department of State. Candace received her MA in Strategic Communications and Public Relations from Trinity Washington University and her BA in Mass Communications from Winston-Salem State University. Mona Zaire currently works in global operations at Facebook. She has a strong interest in political and social causes with emphasis on education reform, diversity and inclusion, and safety with a concentration in human trafficking. In her spare time, she enjoys volunteering with young girls empowerment groups, hosting social academic events, and offering teachings in nutrition and wellness. Mona served as the 2016-17 Student Government Association president at Winston-Salem State University. During this time, she also served as a Board of Trustees member, a White House HBCU All-Star Ambassador. She is constantly open to opportunities where she can combine her passion of public service, community outreach, teaching, and specialized research. Mona was recently awarded the U.S. Department of State Thomas R. Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellowship. Upon completion of the fellowship, Mona will have the opportunity to enhance prosperity and development, promote human rights globally, assist American citizens abroad, and deepen ties within the United States and around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Welcome to a very special edition of Future Focus Now We have a cadre of Rams in the house. Welcome to Future Focus, everyone. How y'all doing?
Thank you, Chancellor.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. You guys are amazing. This is the beginning of Women's History Month. And in many ways, I think our audience will see that in many ways, you're pioneers in many of the things that you're doing. And we put this show together because we wanted to highlight the importance of women in this space. And this is a very unique space. Mignon Turner, can you take us through? You and I were talking before we came on the air. This is quite special, quite unique, having this group of folks together, this group of women.
Absolutely, Chancellor. And first, I'll speak on behalf of all of us here, just saying how much it is such a treat for us to be here on the show as Rams. This platform that you put together to introduce topics of interest to the students and to the community is phenomenal, and we're just happy to be a part of it. So thank you for inviting us. This is a special panel. I'm really happy to be with these dynamic women today. All of us represent different levels of the Department of State, which is the leading agency for promoting foreign policy abroad. I am a U.S. diplomat. I work in U.S. embassies and consulates abroad. Candace, as you mentioned, she is a specialist, a civil servant. She works on communications and cultural adaptability in Washington. And so she's our bread and butter of our State Department in Washington. And Mona here recently was elected, as you mentioned, to one of our most prestigious scholarships, and it will pay for her graduate school. And then she will then come into the Foreign Service and be a U.S. diplomat as well. And it's so powerful to see all of them here today and to be here with you, Chancellor, because, as a diplomat, it's always encouraging for me to know that other young people know about this field. Currently, there are 19,000 diplomats, whether they're Foreign Service officers like myself or specialists, and they come in with very special skills. They can be medical doctors or engineers, information technology workers, and sort of secretaries. They staff our embassies as well. So together we are about 19,000, but all in all, there are 7% African Americans in the service and only 2% are women. And so we would love to have more Rams at the table when we're discussing foreign policy issues, like Mona mentioned, in human rights, LGBTQI rights, climate change, educational partnerships, economic development, security, health partnerships. And so we are happy to talk about our careers and give you information on how you can apply for them, build your skills for them. And of course, we're happy to serve as mentors along the way as well.
This is a proud moment for me. I feel like a proud father listening to you guys and looking at all the amazing things that you have done. So being chancellor at Winston-Salem State University gives me an opportunity to have a front row seat and just some amazing talent that comes through the university. And it's not by accident that Winston-Salem State University is one of the premier institutions in this country because of the products that we produce. And you three are living proof of those products. Let's go around the horn just a little bit. I gave your introduction. Let you speak for yourself. Just tell me quickly, we'll get into the nuts and bolts a little bit later. Tell me quickly where you are and what you're doing. Candace.
Thank you, Chancellor. So I'm located in Washington, D.C. I work in our main state, as Mona and Mignon know. And in my role as a public affairs specialist, I have the honor of, like I said, planning the HBCU Foreign Policy Conference. But as a public affairs specialist, you can do a number of things. I'm very thankful for my education at Winston. It kind of set the foundation for a lot of the things I'm doing now. So primarily, I do outreach. I connect our subject matter experts in Washington, all over the United States. Passport specialists are located in each one of our 50 states in the U.S., as well as our diplomats abroad. And I connect them to the American people, whether it be diaspora outreach to the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts of America, you name it. It's mainly to make sure that Americans know what it is our foreign policy priorities are abroad and how that can impact them here in the U.S.
Yeah, great, fantastic. And then we have the youngest member of the group, Mona Zaia. And Mona, it feels like you just left the university, having served at the university as student body president. And as most folks know, if you're student body president at a university, you get a chance to work directly with the chancellor, with the board of trustees and the board of governors. And it's a tremendous learning experience. Mona did a great job. We missed you. Tell us where you are right now, Mona.
Yes, thank you, Chancellor. And I definitely miss WSSU very much. Currently, I am in Texas, as I was sharing earlier, survived the winter storm. And I just want to thank all of the Rams, past, current, and former, who checked in on me, sent me water, and just sharing like Ram love just wherever we are, and no matter how much time has passed, really meant a lot to me. So currently based in Texas, I work in global operations at Facebook, specifically as a market specialist for North America. And what that means is I am sort of the boots to the ground when it comes to our users and their safety. So this can range from counterterrorism to bullying and harassment, nothing too small or too big. My job and my team's job is just to make sure that when users are on our family of products, that you are using it with integrity and with safety. And I really get to flex my skill of policy enforcement, which I studied political science in undergrad. And so very rewarding. And outside of my core role, my subject matter expertise is in human trafficking, as well as in operational readiness with our workflows and working with contractors all over the world. And when I'm not doing that, I also serve as an internal committee for our Black Employee Resource Group, which has been vital to my success at Facebook. Similar to the staggering numbers at the Department of State, we are 3% of Black employees at Facebook in the US. And so that onboarding program in that community is something that means a lot to me. It's something that I've learned on how to do at an HBCU, specifically at Winston-Salem State. And so I take a lot of pride in the leadership and development that I get to do for Black at ATX at Facebook. And from a wellness perspective, I regionally lead our North America Resilience and Wellbeing Program. And that's specifically because our team serves in a crisis management and crisis response situation that can range from mass shootings to the insurrection that occurred on January 6th. And so we do a lot of proactive resilience boosters and programs, and I oversee that for my team for North America.
I mean, great work, and thank you for that. We're going to get into some of the specifics in terms of what you guys do. Let's set the stage. Oftentimes when people think about going into careers, Mona, you talked about being at Facebook. We talked about being at the State Department. Certainly some very prestigious positions that each of you serve in. Tell us about getting to those positions. Some people think that you got to go to an Ivy League school. You three did not go to an Ivy League school, but we think that what we do at Winston-Salem State is second to none. I want each of you to take a few moments and talk about your experience at an HBCU, but certainly Winston-Salem State University, what that means for you, what that meant for you then, and what it means for you now, and how it influences your work. Okay.
Hey, well, Chancellor, if you don't mind, I'll jump in here on this question. I double majored at Winston-Salem State in mass communications and Spanish, and I just knew I wanted to be a journalist, right? That's what I thought I wanted to do. And I have to give all credit to me being here as a U.S. diplomat, 15 years working for the U.S. government, to Winston-Salem State, because it was Dr. Little's class in political science where he asked me after class, did I want to report the news or did I want to make the news? And I thought, I can do both. And he said, no, you really need to choose. And I thought, what a profound question at that stage. And because of his question, it led me to look into a master's in urban affairs and public policy, to think about careers, working abroad, becoming a global citizen. And today, when I'm working in the Foreign Service, whether I'm working in an office where we are trying to figure out how we can bring about peace and a civil agreement in South Sudan, when we create that policy with our partners in Kenya and Ethiopia and Uganda, that policy is then drafted in the newspaper. And when that happens every time, it's been 15 years and it never fails. When I see our policy that I've worked on in the paper, I think about Dr. Little. And I think here I am creating the news on a global scale. And so I just completely owe my career and my change in my thought process to be more than just someone who was thinking on a neighborhood and community level, but on a global level. And we have seen, even with the pandemic, how interconnected our world is, how one virus that starts in Wuhan, China can spread around the world and caused devastation for families in North Carolina all the way to Burma. And so with the internet now, with all of these resources, we are not limited to just our geographic location. And I think careers in foreign affairs allow you to do that. It allows you to work closely with individuals around the world. As diplomats, we are helping to promote a safe, secure, and prosperous world, because we know when the world is safe, secure, and prosperous, American people, American students, American families also benefit. And that's why it's so important for us. So I've been living abroad for almost 8 years. During that time, I'm working with U.S. embassies and U.S. consulates. We are trained in languages before we go on to each assignment. So I came into the Foreign Service with the Spanish that I learned at Winston-Salem State. And my first assignment was in Mexico. But then my second assignment was in Cameroon, which is a Francophone and Anglophone country. So I had to learn French. And they teach you the language to the level so that you're not just able to order off a menu, but you're actually able to read the newspaper, listen to the radio, have conversations with government officials, with civil society, with cultural officers to collect information that could help improve partnerships in that country and in the United States. And so it has been such a rewarding career for me. I'm very grateful for Winston-Salem and for the opportunity to have been groomed there, where I participated in so many activities that allowed me to really hone in skills that have been critical to the Foreign Service: public speaking skills, writing skills, judgment, analytical skills. And so I just encourage our students at Winston to continue to take advantage of all of those opportunities. You can leave Winston and really be an expert in a certain area, and then grow that expertise as you go on into any career, whether it's law, foreign policy, government, education. And so, so just joining the women on the panel to say thank you to Winston for that.
Yeah, thank you. Mona, how did you get to Winston-Salem State University?
As in, how did I navigate the
experience? How did you get there? I mean, what brought you to, you came, you left your brother there?
I did. I did. Okay. Wow, vulnerable moment here. So I never had intentions of attending Winston-Salem State. So I always tell people—
that's fine. But we got—
yeah, please don't kick me off this Zoom call. But I do always tell students, because I also do recruiting since I've graduated. And I always say, I didn't choose WSSU, but WSSU certainly chose me. I think that when we talk about like Ivy League institutions and just the way that I was shaped by my academic experience as a child. So, I went to Title I schools in North Carolina. And so for me, I think my experience was, I just had a very one-track mind that if I went to a specific institution, that would grant me the level of success that I was looking for, the academic achievement that I wanted. And so in my mind, when I was applying to different schools, it was actually my academic advisor who graduated from Chapel Hill. She told me, she was like, "You're applying to WSSU." And she told me that, and I trusted her. So I did. And then for me, I was chasing the money, which, I wanted the title, but I also wanted the money. Whoever was giving me the best package was where I wanted to go, because I couldn't afford college. And so WSSU offered me the opportunity to not only have a free education, but to be a Chancellor Scholar. And so talking with my parents about that, and I'm first generation American, and explaining to them like, well, this is an HBCU and this is what WSSU is, and going to the campus with them, I think it was just like a mesmerizing experience to just see people who look like you, and to see people who look like you in just excellence and thriving and setting a standard of what your education can really be. And so although it was not what I expected or I thought the kind of school I was going to go to, it was invaluable. It was transformative and life-changing. And so WSSU definitely chose me. And I'm always happy to talk to other students about that. And I'm even proud now that current students that I taught when I was in Teach for America in High Point are now Rams. They're freshmen and sophomores. And so being able to kind of carry that legacy and pass that forward means so much to me.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Candace, you reached out to me a while back, and then you called me out and you said, we got to do some more work. You got to do more work with us here at the State Department. Dr. Robinson, that's what you told me. Tell me a little bit about your experience. You were there. I came in 2015. You were graduating in 2015.
Yes. So the reference that Chancellor Robinson is making, I took it upon myself in my role. I get the honor of coordinating the HBCU Foreign Policy Conference. There's a huge disconnect. Before we got on this call, Mignon was sharing her next assignment, which is as a recruiter for the department. We have to do so much more work at the State Department to connect with more historically Black colleges and universities, because there is a resource gap with our HBCUs. We do not have the robust international affairs programs that Georgetown has, that American University, Arizona State, some large state schools have. So I told my team that we are going to call every single HBCU that we can find and talk to all the chancellors, the provosts, the deans, the professors, the Dr. Littles of every campus, right? And I had the opportunity to talk to Chancellor Robinson last summer, and, I scolded him like I scolded every other president. And I just like we're talking now, I was telling every single president.
She did, Mona, call me out.
I said, look, we have diplomats in residence in every region of the U.S. And then I got what's a diplomat in residence? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, we got work to do. So I am very honored that I'm in a position now to utilize, if I may answer one of the questions you asked Mignon, to utilize my skills that I gained at Winston-Salem State. And if I may shout out some sisters at Winston and brothers and professors that I had that really shaped my professionalism. If I wasn't in the classroom, people knew me at Winston for running around planning an event, whether it was for CAB or CLMC or just any number of organizations that I was a part of. I think I joined daggone near everyone from freshman to senior year. And in my role now at the department, I'm planning conferences and briefings, and I get to work with FSOs like Mignon, foreign service officers, and subject matter experts. So some of the classes that I took at Winston, I was like, I'm never going to use this. When am I ever going to write a script? If you go to state.gov/HBCUs, there's a lovely video that talks about why HBCUs matter at the State Department. And I was the lucky drafter of that script. So when my supervisors asked me to draft a script and it's due by COB, it's already 2:00, even though it was a minute and a half video, as Mignon knows, we have to get things cleared in a certain amount of time. So I'm drafting this script and I'm like, this is crazy that some of the things I learned in Hall-Patterson are really impacting my career to this day here in DC. So I'm very forever grateful for what Winston-Salem State University offered me, and to pay it back in my role. I have such a fun job. I tell people all the time, people probably think I'm crazy. I tweet about my job all the time because that's how much I love it. And I know I may not ever get this moment again. So that's why I do not take it for granted. And it's such an honor to be a public servant, to really believe in the mission of your organization. Like you don't meet too many people like Mignon who've been at their organization for over a decade. I myself started as an intern, as a Pathways intern, actually. And I have pictures of myself in, Lord Jesus, what's the name of the business building in Winston? I have pictures of myself at briefings and events with the diplomat in residence that was in North Carolina back when I was at Winston, because I wanted to make sure that students at Winston-Salem State knew that I'm an intern and I'm working at the State Department. I'm only, at the time, maybe 19 years old. And I didn't think I was going to stay at the State Department after I graduated, but, fate found me in an elevator, literally. And I've been here ever since. So I would just say for students who are mass comm majors, arts majors, we have graphic designers at the State Department. We have nurses. There's literally something for everybody. And in my role, I get to bring that to light to the American people. So it's an honor, and I don't take for granted everybody that shaped me and my experience. Shalee, Ms. Davis, Mitchell, everybody. It was just an honor.
Right. Well, great. I want to take us through and have a quick conversation about, because as I look at your bios and I look at the work that you're doing, you talked about your experiences at Winston-Salem State University in the social justice space. You talked about the Larry Littles of the world. Winston-Salem State University is historically and notoriously known to be in the social justice space. I had a conversation with Congressman Clyburn last week, and I asked him, what does social justice look like today? And what are the kinds of things should students be involved in? For me, you guys have transformed social justice in terms of the work that you do, in terms of policy. Social justice in Black spaces. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of those. Mona, you talked about the work that you do at Facebook in terms of looking at the groups that you have started, creating a Black space there. Why are those spaces important? And how has social justice, how have you reimagined in the spaces that you guys operate in social justice? Mona, you want to take that one for me?
Yeah, I don't mind. I think, simply put, is demanding equity. I think that when we talk about what it means to be Black in America, what it means to be a Black woman in America, I think that it's not enough to just to me at least, to carry the identity, but to create spaces of change that not only elevates and shines light for yourself and the dignity and respect that you do deserve, but also creating a pathway for others so that they don't endure the same experiences. So when it comes to me, the experience that I have at Facebook, I know for a fact that there were Black women before me who were breaking down certain doors that I didn't have to worry about when I walked into it, and I got to walk into it unapologetically. And so the barriers that I still continue to face, not only just being a Black woman in corporate, but being a Black woman in tech, I know that it is incumbent upon me to not only alleviate those spaces for myself, because that's kind of like that confidence I always say that HBCUs just give you, you just know your worth, and you're not settling for anything else. And you have a taste of what that feels like. So you're not going back to any inferiority or any type of situation where you're not treated as such. And so I think for me, social justice is I think is just me being me and exercising that authenticity, but creating spaces so that people behind me don't endure any of the things that I've done. So the goal is always a better experience for the next person that looks like me. And I think that even with social justice, it's not even just, we're not even talking about like racial inequities. We're talking about inclusion. We're talking about people having the right and dignity to be seen, treated, and respected as a human being. And that means if I'm advocating for someone who is trans to someone who is differently abled, like all of those things mean something to me. And I remember a professor at Winston-Salem State who said in a panel, she said, we're not trying to live in a tolerant society. We're trying to live in a radically accepting one. And I never forgot that. And so I carry that with me in just the way I move, I mentor, I educate. And that's what social justice means to me currently.
Right. Mona, powerful. I mean, it's a powerful statement about social justice in 2021. Mignon, take us through in terms that in this space, traveling, certainly great international experience. Talk about the importance of social justice in Black spaces.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything Mona just said. I recall once hearing Secretary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, she was asked a similar question, and her response was, in America, we may not change the hearts and minds of everybody, but what we can change is laws. And I thought, how profound. We have the ability, no matter where we come from in the United States, I'm from a small town in Burlington, North Carolina, to impact laws, whether it's on a local level or on a global level and an international level. And so as a US diplomat coming in 2006, I would often be one of the only diplomats of color in that space. And I just thought sometimes when we're talking about heavy policy issues, whether it is, sort of corruption in government or accountability, or whether we're talking about human rights abuses, I thought how important it is to have a person of color, a minority here at this table to make sure that our messages that we are delivering to the public are delivered in an adequate way, are delivered in a way that reach people and help them understand better about the United States and our policy, as opposed to having a view that may not be as positive or as glowing. And so I would say in this field, in foreign affairs, it is critical that we have people of color be a part of this. And not only are you promoting justice abroad, I'm working with young women in Cameroon, when I was in Cameroon, who are victims of female genital mutilation, and they don't want that for their daughters. So in this capacity as a diplomat, I can give a grant to their organization. I can give them a scholarship, a Fulbright scholarship, a different type of scholarship, so they can travel to the United States, meet with our civil rights and human rights workers, and then go back to Cameroon and change laws in their own country. And that is such a powerful opportunity for me as a young girl from Burlington, North Carolina, that not only do these Cameroonians get a chance to enhance their skills, but our students in the universities that meet them are also learning from their experiences. And so I think that's what justice means. We are in a world today where we can share lessons learned, achievements, and successes. I think about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He really was inspired by Gandhi and his nonviolent movement. I know when I was serving in South Africa, the number of sort of anti-apartheid activists would say, we really appreciated the Southern Civil Rights Movement. That really inspired us. And so when you think about justice, it's global, right? Like what impacts the United States also impacts young people in the Philippines. And so it's important for us to all play our role and then to learn the lessons that other countries have also been sort of gaining over the years and the challenges and work together and strengthen that together.
All right, great. I mean, Candace, you're passionate about your work. You love your work. You're unapologetic in the fact that you want to support HBCUs and get more folks of color into the State Department. Talk a little bit about your work, social justice, how it impacts the policies. You talk a lot about policy. You're a policy person. So talk a little bit about that.
I think from a social justice standpoint, in my previous role, I worked as a public affairs specialist in a functional bureau that covered conflict and stabilization issues. And like Mignon was saying, I never got a chance to go overseas, but a lot of the work I had to do was either helping craft articles or different pieces of literature that might have discussed what some of the issues were going on overseas. And in a lot of those communities were people that looked like me, but were in very disenfranchised environments. So I was also looking at different articles, in particular about women in various countries who might be suffering because they do not have access to certain, let's just say education is a big thing, especially the State Department. They didn't have access to education. So for me, on the opposite end, from a Washington standpoint, it's not so much as a social injustice. It was also just kind of checking my colleagues on a certain things because some of their writing can come across tone deaf about, if we're just being honest. And it's like, you can't just write in this manner, in this tone about a woman of color. And I wish I would give some specific examples, but I also want to keep my day job. So just to kind of just go over some examples, that for me was a moment that I took pride in because I was always, most of the time, the only African-American, the youngest, the only woman in the room. And, it just made me I felt honored to be in the room. And I also felt a privilege to have to be the person on the receiving end that got to educate my colleagues who were either, generations older than me or just more experienced than I was. But they trusted my opinion because of who I am as a Black woman. So I take that as kind of my moments for social justice at the State Department, not necessarily from a policy standpoint, but just how I can impact change to make sure my colleagues understand that if we're going to talk about women of color, right, in these countries that are foreign to you, but they trust the U.S. government to carry out these various grants and programs to help elevate their communities, we also need to represent them respectfully in our literature and our policy documents here in Washington. So as a public affairs specialist, I'm always reviewing documents like that to make sure it's appropriate, that it's not, most of the time I'm making sure it's not tone deaf, that it's, reflected in our policy documents.
Yeah. So one of the things that I hope, and as I listen to you and the work that you do, and I hope that each of you have a very high level of awareness, not only self-awareness, which is obvious in terms of the way in which you talk and speak, but awareness about what's happening in your communities and so forth. And I hope that each of you will celebrate victories and successes. Wonder if I could get you to talk a minute or so about as you look at the work that you've done, one or two things that you're very proud of, and you can say, I'm really glad I was in that space, and because I feel, like I'm making a difference. I wonder if you could share one or two things around that. It came to mind, Mignon, when you was talking about the women in Cameroon, for example, and you said I could orchestrate or be in a position to help get them a grant. I can imagine something of that nature would be rewarding. Each of you take a moment to talk about that.
I don't mind jumping in
Okay.
here. Candace, do you want to start?
I was thinking, yeah, I can go. I work a lot with students. In my current role, as I mentioned, I have the HBCU portfolio, but I also have a program called the Foreign Policy Classroom, which I'm excited to bring to all of the HBCU campuses in the United States. But in that capacity, I get the chance to help kind of bridge what was also seeming like a mountain to some students of how do I just get in the door. So a lot of my proudest moments at the State Department have just been engaging with students to help them understand that this is very attainable, especially young African-American women. I share my LinkedIn all the time. We were all recent grads once upon a time. And like I said, I got to my career through the elevator, literally in the elevator. But I know that's not going to be the same case for most people. And as you know, we're in a pandemic society right now, it's even more difficult. So for me, my proudest moments are when I get to really influence and help inspire students, because I share all the time my story to state, but it's also very important that we continue to keep this legacy alive, having these conversations like we're having tonight that I'm going to share with my interns, with their friends. So my proudest moments for me is pretty much every day at my job, because I do love my job, where I get to, just help close the gap a little more, so people can see that this is an attainable goal for you. Don't think that because you didn't declare that major, because you didn't go abroad that one semester, that you don't know a foreign language. These are myths. These are myths. Yes, these are things that Mignon and Mona have done. I did not study a foreign language. I did not go abroad. I studied mass comm, never took political science. But I worked hard and I got to where I am through a lot of diligence and patience. But for me, the proudest moments are when I get to really connect with a student.
Absolutely. Tell us about the conference that you put together and bringing folks together.
Yes. So I hosted the 12th annual HBCU Foreign Policy Conference virtually. So 2-3 months ago, we were under a different administration, so we weren't sure how things were going to happen. We thought we were going to be in the building. Normally the conference is in person. And when we found out that we were going to be, on our computers, I said, okay, how am I going to do this? So what normally is a 1-day conference from 8 a.m. to 3 turned out to be 2 days. So I got the opportunity to spread even more information. The website is still alive and well, so I'm happy to drop the link after this live for people if they want to check out some of the sessions. Mignon was one of our speakers. We were happy to have her. But the conference is really meant to expose historically Black college and university students, faculty, staff members, folks like yourself, Chancellor, to careers in foreign policy and just our foreign policy priorities. Again, our HBCUs oftentimes just don't have the resources. We have diplomats in residence who are located all over the United States, stationed at universities, but only 2 are at historically Black colleges. So we want to make sure that we're doing our part here in DC, and making sure that all students of various backgrounds that are attending our HBCUs understand and know that a career in foreign policy and just understanding what the State Department does, it's not just for the political science major. Like I said, it's something for everybody. We go over, it runs the gamut, like climate change, human rights, as Mona was talking about, trafficking in persons. I can go on because I kind of have the org chart down to a science. But
I think you do. I mean, but if I'm a student at an HBCU, how do I get there? I mean, what's the pathway to getting there?
Well, there's no one pathway. I will say that there's no one route. I was a Pathways intern. So for folks who are not familiar with the Pathways program, that is a very prestigious program. I want to say it started under the Obama administration. Don't misquote me. But that program allows you, after you finish either your bachelor's degree or your master's degree, non-competitive status into the civil service. By non-competitive status, I mean I do not have to go through USA Jobs to get my FTE, my full-time employment position. So I graduated right out of Winston, and I went back to Washington, and it was just like a normal day at my internship, and I just happened to have a connection that got me into my first role in another bureau as a public affairs specialist, actually acting public affairs officer for several months until a PAO like Mignon came on board. But as far as entryways, that's where folks like Mignon who are going to be who's going to be a recruiter soon come into play. I encourage all HBCU students to go to careers.state.gov and find your diplomat in residence. It is their job to be the face of the State Department in various regions. There should be one located in North Carolina that is at the leisure of Winston-Salem State to get involved with. I did a lot of work with the diplomat in residence when I was at Winston, just to make sure there were programs that students could be aware of, or you could take advantage of an internship or a fellowship like Mona's to go into the foreign service. So there's a number of ways. At the Foreign Policy Conference last week, a lot of our colleagues shared fellowships, grant opportunities that are not posted on USA Jobs. So it kind of is a networking game, but I'm very excited to be launching a mentorship program for HBCUs specifically in the fall with some of my colleagues at the State Department. So it'll be a matchmaking as well, but we want to get career services, the Dr. Littles involved. So there's information that's shared and it goes to the HBCUs first.
Fantastic. Mona, how does one get from HBCU, Winston-Salem State, to Facebook? And talk a little bit about, your career thus far and what you're most proudest of.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's not the degree that you're trying to get from college. It's definitely the holistic experience. And I'm a firm believer that my level of involvement in the things that I've done on campus literally set me up between soft and analytical skills for it to be transferable, that put me in the right places and in the right position to really create impact, whether that was Teach for America, which I did right after Winston, and then that catapulted me into Facebook. And so I like, as a big PSA to any student that is watching this now or will listen to this, is that don't underestimate your campus involvement experience and also be intentional about it. It's not enough to just, I'm going to run for this position just because, or, I'm going to do this because all my friends are doing this. It's what skills, what objectives, like what are you actually trying to gain by being in this role? What are you trying to learn by joining this organization? For me, I would say definitely with Winston, I can start there in terms of things that I'm incredibly proud of, because I'm a firm believer that it pushed me to TFA and to Facebook is two things. I would say one was the Home Depot Retool Your School project. And so you know what I'm talking about, Chancellor Romsey. Yes. The Home Depot Retool Your School project. I mean, when I talk to recruiters, it's still on my resume. I mean, like being able to fundraise, to get and garner in a period of 6 weeks. And I'm using metrics intentionally to get us first time ever to place and to earn, $30,000. That's a huge fleet. And that's something that I'm incredibly proud of. I mean, that's something that the Zen Zone, exactly. That's something, I come back to campus and, I'm emotional because I see my administration, I see our efforts materialized. And that's something that I'm incredibly proud of. That's something that I love to talk to recruiters about. This is what I did. This is how I did it. This was the impact on our campus because of it, just because wellness and mental health means so much to me. Secondly, I would say enter to learn, depart to serve abroad. So me and my vice president, Anthony Wells at the time, we launched this program. Thank you to the Chancellor's Office and to Student Affairs for putting that money and matching dollars to our SGA budget. But we were like, you know what? We want students who have never been abroad to go abroad. And we don't want economic barriers to be the reason why they don't go. And I'm so, I get chills even now thinking about it because I've been privileged to study abroad every single year since I was in high school. And I still commit to that. I don't know how during a pandemic, but I've done it. And for me, it's like that to me is the global experience. That is where you kind of open your mind and the world is bigger than North Carolina and the East Coast and the US. And you start thinking about your behaviors, your actions, and your impact on a much deeper and bigger level. And so, we 9 students got to go for free and build a house in the Dominican Republic who have never traveled before. And we still have a connection, some of us, and to see them even continuing to travel means something to me, and it's something that I'm very, very proud about, because that's our motto for our institution, right. And to learn part to serve. And then lastly, I would say, because those two experiences and other experiences were transferable into Facebook, I think that my campus involvement made me a really high performer, also in the classroom, because I had Dr. Little too. I had Dr. Mui. I had all the Coltrane professors, and, nothing less than your best. And I credit that to how I perform at Facebook. And then I will also say something that I'm proud about at Facebook is our global operations work stream. This past year, we actually historically created a racial justice work stream. And me being a representative, the only representative in my actual vertical, I get to help and work with managers and directors on creating a pipeline and processes for projects solely focused on racial justice on our platform. So one of our big wins actually was the increase of verifications of HBCUs. Because that falls into our org. And so all of these projects are specifically focused on improving the Black experience, period. And I'm happy to be at a company where we're openly talking about that. There's no hiding behind the bushes and working with people who are committed to that change. And so those are my top things that I can just go to sleep happy about.
Sounds great. Mignon, what do you have for us?
All these women are so incredible. I'm so proud to be on this panel. I would say, when I think about my time at Winston, as I mentioned, I was a Spanish major, but at that time, in order to major in Spanish, you had to minor in another language. So I had to pick up French, which I was so frustrated with at the time. But that foundation was instrumental when I joined the Foreign Service. And I also say that there was a community development center on Winston-Salem's campus that you could work and, sort of help with housing and development, sort of skills for young people. And I interned there in the Community Development Center. And that's where I got a chance to really experience grant writing and work on grant writing. So in Cameroon, one of my favorite stories as a diplomat is when I was in Cameroon, there was an opportunity for diplomats to write a grant up to $100,000 to promote cultural sustainability while you're in your country. And, one of my friends told me, did you know Cameroon had a slave port, which I thought only existed in West Africa. Cameroon is in Central Africa. So I asked for permission from the Minister of Culture, took a trip out with my ambassador to see where this slave port was in Bimbia. And it was sort of being run by a tribal leader there. There were chains, there were slave, sort of where they kept slave cells, where they kept the slaves. It was a little bit dilapidated, lots of bush and brush all covering many of the structures. And so working closely with the Minister of Culture, I wrote the grant based on my skills from Winston-Salem State in grant writing. We received $100,000. And 2 years later, now Cameroon has a slave port. So if African Americans trace their DNA back to Cameroon, this is a place that they could visit. It has signage, it has information. We work with an architect to ensure the slave cells looked like what they would have looked like at that time. And to know that that was a shared piece of culture between Cameroon and the United States. And as a US diplomat, I could work with Cameroonian partners to make that also an economic source for their country. It just makes me so proud. It's one of the things that I will always remember as a diplomat. And so I would say that, as Mona mentioned, continue to think about your skills that you are grooming at Winston-Salem State. One of my mentors once mentioned to me, for me to write down my greatest achievements. And in doing so, she looked over them and she said, you know what, these look great, but they're very heavy in public speaking. They're very heavy in writing. They're very heavy in sort of putting planning and organizing. She was like, we need to see more achievements in judgment and analytical skills and critical thinking. And her pointing out that gap meant that I then took on positions in the Foreign Service that would allow me to feel those areas. And I think there's no better place to do that than while you're at Winston-Salem. Studying abroad is important. I studied abroad while I was at Winston, lived with a family in Mexico, worked in Dominican Republic for a summer. Ms. Brenda Taylor was very helpful in getting me fellowships and internships at other places. And so work with faculty very closely, spend time in their offices. They have a wealth of knowledge and information. And if you let them know what you're interested in, they can, like Dr. Little did for me, help point you in a direction that could open up your mind to other experiences or help lead you down that path. And so I am, as a diplomat, I work closely with the press. I have to conduct interviews, whether it be in Spanish or French, talking about U.S. foreign policy. Those language skills, although they were strengthened in the department, the foundation came from Winston. And so I'm really grateful for everything Winston gave me for that reason.
Now, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, and I'm in awe of all three of you and the work that you're doing. It's absolutely amazing. I knew that we were going to run out of time. We're actually getting close to the end, but I give each of you 2 minutes to give us your parting words in terms of what you would tell students or anyone interested in the HBCU or a recruitment opportunity. So you can use your 2 minutes both to recruit and also parting words of wisdom. Candace.
Oh, I was hoping I go last. I would just say, you hear Mona and Mignon talk a lot about Dr. Little and their professors. Please don't take your professors at Winston for granted, or any place that you're studying. Do not take them for granted. Mignon and I both got our masters. Mona is about to go on to get her master's. I still talk to my professors from my master's program. And if it wasn't for their mentorship, I would just say seeking a mentor has been really crucial for me. And the mentor I have now is phenomenal. And I think if it had not been for somebody telling me, you have a lot of goals, but it might be good if you kind of just honed in on just streamlining them. Look, who do you want to emulate? You don't have to try to copy them in its entirety, but I literally sought out a civil servant, public affairs, cone or specialty individual. And I want to be just like her. And I think if it had not been for having those conversations with Dr. Blunt, my class got on Dr. Jeter's nerves in Hall Patterson. But the toughest courses I took at Winston, honestly, are the ones that have helped me with my writing to this day. And I think that if I were a student again, I would probably spend a little more time just taking in what they're telling me and really digest it and understand that, like Mona and Mignon said, these are skills that are going to help you in the long run. Yeah. Writing skills are very important.
I wonder for each of you, if you think about the fact we began this hour, and I said that you guys were pioneers in many ways. Do you feel like a pioneer? Do you feel like you're a trailblazer in some ways?
I do, because I'm not where I was 5 years ago when I met Mignon. So I feel like I'm blazing a trail. And this last week's conference, be it virtual, that was the first time my agency had done a virtual conference from my bureau's perspective. So I'm setting the tone, and I think that's going to help me and help others see that this is an attainable goal.
I love that. Mignon, take us through. And last words.
Sure. When I was at Winston-Salem State, an interesting thing is I went to a Peace Corps meeting, and I remember hearing that you had to serve 2 years abroad, and I thought, oh, that's too long. I definitely don't want to do that. And here I am after spending 8 years abroad. And I would just encourage young people to try. I mean, the Foreign Service, as a U.S. diplomat, when you're abroad, they pay for your housing. So you get your full salary to travel, to do, to bring your family to come see you. You put your children in school. Your spouses can find work. You're gaining new language skills, cultural adaptability skills. You're working in areas with folks who are at the highest echelon of government, all the way down to civil society. And so I would say, just take the Foreign Service exam. It is scheduled in February, in June, and October. You can go on careers.state.gov and look at internships and fellowships and positions, but take the exam. It's free. And if you pass the written exam, then you'll be invited to take the oral exam and give it a try. I think you will find that it will be one of the most rewarding careers that you will have ever endeavored to do.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Mona.
For students, I would say chase the responsibility and not the title. Social cloud is nice amongst your 4 years, but you have a whole career ahead of you. And I think it's really important that you hone in on the type of skills and think about life design. And then also with our HBCUs, I think that one of the best skills I've learned at Winston is navigating ambiguity. And so I would really challenge students, if you're there, if you're paying the tuition dollars and you're showing up, online and on campus, and there are services or programs that you feel have not yet existed for you, be that trailblazer for yourself and advocate. Have conversations from Blair Hall to USAY. Talk to Dr. McThompson if you want the Model United Nations program to come back. This experience is truly what you make it to be. And I challenge every student to really exercise those 4 years, because you don't get it back. There's no place like Winston. And so I'm so glad that I've graduated without a shred of regret. And I feel like I've maximized all the people and opportunities that I could to live the life that I've always wanted to create for myself. So in that aspect, I would say, yes, I do consider myself a trailblazer in that way. And then in my last 20 seconds, and feel free to cut me off, but I just wanted to thank Miss Davis and Miss Page and Miss Curitan and Miss Boston and Mr. Ivy and just all the people, Dr. Stitz, Miss Wall, just the Ramily beyond just our professors, because all of those people, and there's way more people to list, but all of those people took care of me. All of those people nurtured and developed me. And so pay it forward. I think we all should be doing that, because it takes a village to raise a child.
And Dr. Harris says, tell you hello. Dr. Harris, he says that
Grandpa tells me hello.
Grandpa
Yes.
says hello. I've been thrilled. I mean, the conversation has been extraordinary. Winston-Salem State University is in a much better position today because you passed through these hallowed halls, and we thank you so much for carrying on the great legacy at WSSU. Thank you for helping us kick off Women's History Month with a bang, and we will try to continue this throughout the month of March. So thank you so much for being with us. It was a great show. Thanks everyone for joining us for tonight's show. And as always, we'll be back again next week for another edition of Future Focus Now.